Hello, homies, and a very warm welcome back to Homeopathy Hangout. Today we have Pierre Fontaine on the show, and it's such a pleasure to be hosting you, Pierre. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you to you. Thank you to you. I'm happy to be here. Really am. Think about autism, basically.
Yes, let's talk about it because you are known as the Autism Whisperer and you have dedicated decades of your life in this area. Can you just quickly give our listeners a rundown of how you were first introduced to homeopathy? How did you learn about it?
Well, very simply, in 1960, when I was born, the pediatrician told my parents, this kid is too frail to vaccinate. I was never vaccinated in my life. And that resonated, I suppose, all the way until my very first patient after I learned homeopathy in England. My first patient was on the spectrum, actually was diagnosed with Rett syndrome, RETT. And that's, some people say that it is an extreme form of autism. And the parents thought, and we're talking about 2000, 1997, something like that. The parents thought vaccine had something to do with it, whether it did or not, because they talked about it, because of my birth, because of many different things. My daughters were never vaccinated either, or vaccinated when they were 8 years old, actually. Somehow it resonated. And it was love at first sight. It's like homeopathy itself. I went to listen to a lecture, and as soon as I heard like cures, that was it. I was all wrapped up, to be honest with you. It took about 3 minutes for me to decide this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it was nearly the same for autism. 1997, I actually had heard of autism. I meet these people, and the only thing in the end I was able to do was literally stop the seizures. The girl never had seizures ever since I first saw her. That's the only thing I was able to do. But somehow people came. People came to just for that. I never talked about it, but people came just with Kid on Spectrum. And that set me up on a journey of meditation. I can talk about this because I only came out of this meditation about a month and a half ago after the third book, The Language of Autism, which I finished published at the end, December 23. And looking back, I don't think, I was telling someone yesterday, I don't think I wrote this book, honestly. I think this book wrote itself. But it is born out of this deep meditation on autism. What is autism? What is this thing that we treat differently? Which is going to be a big deal of this interview because we should not. So, yeah, there was Autism One, or there is Autism One, this organization Autism One in the US, and they had a radio station. I did one show or two shows on there, I think it's still there, and I called it Going Within. I'm looking back and I'm thinking, what happened? It's not how did I know, but yeah, the journey was set up. The journey set itself up.
I think that happens when you're in the flow, when you're doing what your soul's mission is on the planet in this lifetime. Things do just flow and things do just fall into place. Because I'm sitting here thinking, how have I recorded 300 episodes of a podcast? Like, how's it happen? I just felt like something was pulling me forward. It wasn't me having to push. Something was ahead of me, pulling me forward. So when you're saying this, it resonates with me because I do feel that when you're completing your life's mission, your soul's mission on this planet, things do just fall into place. So when you say you feel like you've been in a meditation and this book's just written itself and these people just came to you and you're not sure how it's all happened, but here you are decades later, an expert in autism, it's happened because that's clearly what your soul's mission is in this lifetime, to help these families with autism. I really like that you've got a very in-depth knowledge of autism and the way that you look at it. It's really interesting. I like you often do Facebook lives where you talk about a lot of this, and you have a lot of gripes with the homeopathic community at the moment and how a lot of us are treating autism, myself included. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because I believe everybody should have a voice, no matter, because homeopathy is practiced so differently. We should all have a voice and have opportunity to say how we treat it. And a lot of us are using homeopathic detox therapy, which is what it's called, or human chemistry, where we use the vaccines in potency, and ascending potency is usually over a few weeks. And I know that you feel strongly that's not the way to do it. So do you want to talk us a little bit about how, I know that you feel that we treat autism different to how we treat every other disease in homeopathy. So maybe talk to us a little bit about that, because I think you were heading that direction. So I'm just trying to set you up for the next chapter.
Yeah, I have very strong words, I must say. Yeah. Here's from what I see, because I have a definition, I have a two-word definition for autism, which also came to me. I don't think, and I think it's a first. So we'll talk about that. But treating autism, there is something inherently separating with autism. Okay? It is autism is often described as a bubble. An individual on the spectrum, in many ways, is separate. In fact, all cases have what Jan calls phase 7. All cases have a phase 7. That is of exclusion. All cases have that. All cases of, in one way or another, mildly or strongly, have a sense of separation. Certainly, individuals on the spectrum have a sense of separation. If we continue as homeopath to treat autism separately or differently than everybody else, we are perpetuating this separation. And that to me is a crime, because we are perpetuating something that we are, as healers, trying to undo, because it is the nature of autism. And our remedies have a universal, do not say spiritual, have a universal dimension. Okay. And by treating differently, then we are perpetuating a separation. And there's nothing worse than this to me. There's nothing worse. We are trying to restore, say, just sociability, and yet we are perpetuating a separation that is unfathomable to me. It's completely contrary to what we are supposed to do, and we are absolutely contrary to the organon, which tells us to not have any prejudice, as aphorism number 1. So this, yeah, it's very strong. I am extremely passionate about this. It must stop, because by continuing that is perpetuating autism itself.
So just clarify that a little bit, because I don't think many of our listeners will understand what you've just saying. But you're saying phase 7 of Jan Scholten's periodic table. Oh, there's the periodic table, but Jan Scholten has obviously given us ideas of which phases and which rows have, what do you call it, like certain themes to it. And so you're saying phase 7 of the periodic table is where there's often a level of separation. And so you're saying most of the children with autism need a remedy from that phase 7 of the periodic table. So
phase 7 is what he calls family constellation, whereas phase 4 is inside the circle. Imagine 7 circles in a row. Number 4 is central. It's the heart. I am within the world. I am accepted, trusted. And 1, I am not accepted. And 7, I am rejected. All cases have phase 7. There's a type, again, mildly or strongly. There's a type, and certainly autism itself is sort of a rejection in essence, because there's a bubble. So it's a sort of rejection. But you see that rejection all the time. Kids in school, the child in school is generally rejected by the other kids. Now, the other kids may be told to be nice and so on and so forth. We're not talking, that's not what we're talking about. All cases on the spectrum feel somehow, one way or another, rejected because of their own condition, which does not allow them to speak, does not allow them to socialize. So it's there. It's absolutely there in every single case. You can see it historically as well. So it's there. The illness itself, autism, is a type of phase 7. It's a type of rejection, if you will, because you're not part of. You're in a bubble. You can't look at it from your point of view. Look at it, go within, and look at it from the point of view of being on the spectrum. The disease itself prevents you from being in the center. We can't look at it from the outside. We have to look at it from the inside. The disease itself, let's call it an illness, the disease itself prevents you from being in phase 4, if you will. It prevents you from joining in. There's a bubble. So by treating differently as well, we are perpetuating this bubble, number one, and we are also antagonistic to what we are meant to do, which is heal. We're not talking about trying to make some changes. That is not what I'm talking about. Anything can make a change. A medication, which most homeopaths are adamantly against, can make a change. We're not talking about a change. We're talking about healing autism. We cannot heal autism by treating it differently.
Mm.
By treating it differently, we are perpetuating autism itself.
Mm.
We are not bringing it into the center.
Do you want to maybe give our listeners your definition of autism? Because I've never heard it put that way, your 2-word definition. I really like that.
So my definition for autism is conceptual inability. Conceptual inability means or includes some of what we call instinct. But conceptual inability means there's no concept of speech. There is no concept of socialization, that which should come naturally. There is no concept of feeding. Weight is usually lower than in, quote, neurotypical babies. There's no concept of anything. There's no concept of pooping. There's no concept of writing. That was one of the biggest eurekas in my life, because writing itself is a concept. I think we are the only species that writes. There's no concept of anything. That is it. There's no concept of being in a group. There's no concept of approaching a group. There's no concept for absolutely anything. And it's been with us, by the way. Autism has always been with us. It is not new. It doesn't start in 1944 with Kanner's article or anything like that. First of all, that's a little bit absurd to think such a thing, even though a couple of months ago I turned on the TV, boom, it's autism. And somebody said it's Kanner's first article. No, Kanner didn't even invent the word autism, which was invented in 1901.
I think you said there's a case down to like as far back as the 1300s that's been recorded.
1300, yeah, because children were abandoned. But 1799 is, I think, the most studied case ever. What we could call the first case, which is not, but 1799 is the most studied case. And because Dr. Itar studied it for 5 years and wrote about it for 5 years, so I think it falls into the category of the most studied case ever. 1799, Victor. And when you read Victor's symptomatology, it's the exact same thing as 2024. And anybody who's looked at that case, there's some contemporary writing about that case, and everybody agrees that it is a case of autism. So, yeah, going back to 1300, autism was there already, yes.
So you feel it's more than just the vaccines and the environmental factors and everything else that is obviously not helping. It's obviously making things worse because we're seeing so many cases of it, but it has been around for a very long time. And you're saying that it's been around before vaccination.
Vaccines have an effect, but they are not the cause. In order to be on the spectrum, there has to be that phase 7 In other words, it's a trigger, but it's not the cause. It's very important to get the language right, and it's very important to not perpetuate a mistake, because healing is to bring in. And so there cannot be any case healed with using something different than everybody else. It's just simply not possible. It's a fallacy.
So you're saying that predisposition needs to be there. So that phase 7 predisposition of like an outcast or being separate somehow needs to be there. And then when you add environmental factors or vaccinations or whatever into it, then you will see the symptomatology of autism.
Right. When I say outcast, mildly or strongly, one of the mildest case of outcast I've had was just the mother. The mother was pregnant. Her husband tells his mother, and the mother says, "Oh, why is your wife pregnant? Your sister is pregnant too. I'm going to have 2 kids." I love that example because it is the mildest, but the way it was felt by the mother was, "I'm not accepted. Here I am, I'm pregnant. Why don't you say hi, welcome, thank you, and it's a wonderful thing. Instead, why are you pregnant?" That's the one of the mildest in the case history type of feeling. Okay. The strongest is not wanting to be pregnant, or one or the other, by either the father or the mother. It has to be there. Now, it's not because it's there that it's automatic the child will be on the spectrum, because there needs to be a stage 12 in my view, not a phase. There's a phase 7, there's a stage 12 also, and there are other precursors. Okay, so it's not because somebody make a sly remark that the child is going to be on the spectrum. I don't want to be misunderstood at all, but it is one of the precursors, yeah. Which, when you include interventions and a few other factors, then you have what I call the red flags for autism. Yes. It's not why are you pregnant and autism will be there. There's a whole lot more involved than that. Let's not simplify it so that it's misunderstood. There's a few things that need to happen. But certainly, autism cannot happen out of the blue. That is for certain. And that's why we cannot say vaccines cause autism. Because otherwise, because in the mind of a doctor, in the mind of the allopathic world, then every kid should be on the spectrum, right? And every kid is not on the spectrum. So there has to be a few things that line up. And then when you do this or that, then yes, it can happen.
So some of the red flags you mentioned, low birth weight. What are some of the other red flags that you've noticed? I know you mentioned a lot of this in your book as well, but what are some other things that you tend to see in the clinic?
Yeah, that's a chapter I was not going to include actually, but I think it is not completely thought out. Everything else is completely thought out. I don't have all the precursors, I don't think. It has to be some sort of that phase 7. Phase 7 can be also during pregnancy, someone passed away. It can be someone maybe passing away. Someone who's in a family with a lung disease that has resonance. Again, there can be a fact. Someone is ill and passing away. But it has to have resonance during pregnancy. It's not just a fact. The fact has to have resonance. It's not because one thing is there that there will be autism. It has to have resonance. If it doesn't have resonance, which I think comes from the entity coming, because I think the mother is a vehicle.
Absolutely. So if somebody like that if a mother-in-law said to me, "Why are you pregnant? Your sister's pregnant." For me, I wouldn't have resonance because they'd be like, whatever. But if you yourself as the mum have a predisposition of having maybe been outcast in the past, you're going to already have that resonance there of being sensitive to something like that. So then you get told that, then there's a sense of, then there's resonance because you are somebody that's sensitive to that sort of thing, whereas I couldn't give it. So,
Well, yes, but not necessarily just the mother. Book 2 deals with what a pregnancy is, the heart of one heart, one mind. What we're talking about now is the language of autism. The mom is pregnant. The mom is inhabited. Being pregnant is being inhabited by another another human being developing, but inhabited by. So I think it's not necessarily just the child, but the mom is being inhabited, is sensitive to these. So it
Mm.
is really the child. It's already the feeling is from the child himself or herself rather than just the mom. Let's take out the I, and it's the mom as a vehicle for birth, for incarnation. I think that is very important. It's not necessarily the mom, but the mom being inhabited by a growing human being is the ego itself is put aside. And so I think what the mom is feeling or reacting to is already from the developing child.
It's going to be really interesting with COVID and everyone that was so isolated and rejected and pushed aside. And it's going to be interesting to see what the autism rates are in the coming years.
There is isolation, isn't there? Beside isolation with COVID, I think it's important to have the language right. Since you bring up COVID, it's important to have the language right. Conceptual inability as a definition. Vaccines don't cause autism, because we are dealing with an industry, with an institution that was able to shut down the entire world for 2 years. There's no government, there's never been a government ever, there's never been an industry or an institution that has ever been able to do that. So if we don't have our language right, the end result is okay, the vaxxers and all these terms that of exclusion. See, we are perpetuating phase 7 by doing things differently. We are also perpetuating phase 7 and not bringing it. So autism cannot be healed. So by using the wrong language, we are also creating a separation. So yes, I will affirm vaccines don't cause autism, and maybe that can be a step. Now, a lot of people may not like that, but I think it is a step in the direction of eliminating, just by acceptance, just by meeting the allopathic world, if you will, the medical institution. I think we are making a step forward towards a handshake and understanding autism. Once we understand autism, once the world understands autism itself will diminish.
So, just to clarify for all the hundreds of mums that I've had in my clinic over the years who told me that they brought their neurotypical, healthy, developmentally normal child in for the MMR vaccine, and they walked out of there with a child who had lost eye contact and screaming constantly and had lost all their milestones. So, the vaccine by itself doesn't cause the autism. You're saying there was some sort of predisposition, like a separation of some sort and low birth weight, and there's something to do with the head circumference, and there's a few other like red flags that were actually there beforehand. And if they weren't there, then the vaccine wouldn't have caused that. So I just want to make it crystal clear, because there are people listening to this that took in a neurotypical child to their doctor and left with a neuro not typical child after a vaccination.
For the last nearly 30 years, that listen, I'm in the same boat, but it requires courage to say what I say. Not only courage, it's the evidence. That's where the evidence is. Now, if we blame allopaths for not having the courage to come forward, because I think all pediatricians somewhere or another must have a certain question mark. If we are going to blame one way, we need to be able to take criticism the other. It takes courage for me to say, yes, vaccines don't cause autism. I'm not saying it doesn't have an effect. I'm not saying anything else but that. We need to have the language right. Okay. And it's only a matter of language. It does not. Otherwise,
Mm,
all kids should be on the spectrum, but they're
mm.
not. It's only a matter of being accurate. If we are practicing a science, and therefore science must be accurate, and we must look at the facts without prejudice. If we continue to think I am right about this, they're wrong, we'll never solve the problem. I'm only taking one step back. I'm not running backward to the allopathic world. I am only putting back into the light, if you will. I'm not taking an opinion, and that is because that's where the light is. The light is factual. Daylight comes and nighttime comes. And actually, I listen to opera. I mean, if I don't see a patient, I'm listening to opera. So I listened to Turandot about 500 times while writing the language of autism. Turandot is really about the hero. The villain, in the end, tells the hero his name is love. There's a whole issue about finding what name is what someone is a couple of hours to find out what's his name. And she says, your name is love. It's only a step back into the light, okay? It's about this is about conquering something that is wrong. It is nothing else. I'm only taking a step or even half a step back into the light so that we know what autism is. Find someone who can give a definition, a 2-word definition.
I really like your definition, the conceptual inability, because like you say, like making friends or even eating or knowing that your poo needs to go in the toilet and not on the walls. And all of these things, they are all concepts. So I really like that it sounds like you defined a cure case of autism when the conception returns, when they understand concepts, then that would for you be a definition of a cured case of autism. When they can understand that there is a person approaching me, I'm saying hi. And actually, because you do talk in one of your lives, you did talk about how writing is a concept and how in ABA therapy, the kids, I think it's an ABA, the kids learn how to write A. So for them, they don't understand the concept of the letter A. They see it as 2 lines, like in a teepee shape with 1 line in the middle. So sometimes it looks more like rugby poles because in their mind, they have got 2 vertical lines and 1 horizontal line. So that must be an A. But we understand, that's neurotypical, understand that's not the concept of an A. A concept of A is it's more like a teepee with a little line in the middle. But in their brain, they're like, I've got 2 vertical lines, I've got 1 horizontal line. That must be what they're trying to get me to do.
Exactly. The kid is not writing an A.
So you wanted to understand that concept of an A rather than just this is the learned behavior of what an A should look like. And when you've got that, then you have conceptual ability.
Right. Or it's Monday morning, I'm going to school, I'm going to get dressed, I'm going to brush my teeth, I'm going to put my backpack on. It's understanding the concept that I am going to school. It's not just school, it's I am going to school. And I need to have shoes on. I need to put my backpack. Mom or dad, I'm not going to put my backpack on or my jacket on and then my backpack on. I could get on the bus myself. They're going to take me to the bus, yeah, because it's safety and that's what we do. But I'm going to get on the bus and I'm going to put my seatbelt on. Dad doesn't have to come on the bus to put my seatbelt on. And to a large extent, if I'm taking the bus that is not just for kids on the spectrum, then the other kids are not going to make fun of me either. Because the prejudice against kids on the spectrum is enormous. We can put a happy face, and I understand that is where a lot of people are going, especially now, putting a happy face as if autism is okay. There's a psychologist a few weeks ago who told me, in any case, who told the group, by the time they're 18, it's a wash because they gained some ability with therapy and everybody's happy. This got to be a joke to a large extent. I thought it was a joke. I thought this person was, but she was perfectly, yeah, so it's all right. You cannot be serious. The image I have right now in my mind is that of a 19-year-old girl who comes home from school, actually. Mom is here, is at the doorstep, and she says hi with tells her name, and that 19-year-old walked right past her. I mean, that was like a dagger in my heart because I asked for videos of everyday situation. And that is clearly not a 19-year-old who is somehow better, which is interesting because parents on the spectrum have this instinct that their kid is on the spectrum because of vaccine. Okay, that's fine. It was most likely the pushover for sure. With the red flag, it was probably the pushover. But there's another instinct as well. And why did this person say at 18 things get better? There's something instinctual here. It's wrong, just like vaccines cause autism. But there's a kernel of truth to it, just a kernel. And the kernel is that actually after 15, so let's say 18, is the end of childhood illnesses. Because I'm pretty certain that if left alone without interference, then a child the child with the precursors would come out of it after 18, more or less. Okay, we're not going to debate on the age here, but adolescence being over, it's the end of childhood illnesses, that which parents feel has caused autism, that is preventing childhood illnesses. So if we understand autism thoroughly, then we can understand that this person, even though what she says is absolutely ridiculous, there is a kernel of truth in what she said. That most of the children, if they were not for intervention, would be better, would be out of that age. And I think out of that age, something must be happening. Something happens in the body where they would start to bloom. Okay. So we would not have the rise of autism, but we would put, if we understand all of this correctly, then we can put autism back to 1799, 1300, where there are few cases. It was there, but a few cases. Okay. If the red flag triggered, that would not be there if we knew exactly what we were doing when raising a child.
Pierre, it's almost 2 a.m. your time. I'm just thinking, do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about your 3 books and where they can purchase that and what are some of the things they can learn from that?
Where do we buy books except for Amazon?
Okay.
Especially in the US. So yeah, Amazon. So that's The Language of Autism. That's the 3rd book. Okay. This is mainly about autism and a bit about homeopathy. I think once someone who reads this has the better part of 80 up to 90% understanding of autism itself. And my 2nd book is One Heart, One Mind, which is mainly about homeopathy and some autism. Because One Heart, One Mind, say, why do you practice the way you do? Okay. With these vaccine clears and so on, perpetuating autism. just
Okay, you're stabbing there. I get good results in my clinic, and I know that you will define good results in different ways.
Do not say that. You can make changes. You cannot heal. It's not possible, just not possible, because you don't have a constitutional remedy. So we can make changes, we can zigzag, but making changes, like I said at the beginning, a medication can make changes. It doesn't mean there is healing. What we're looking at is healing. What we're looking for is neurotypicality.
I'm entertaining you here because I have seen it return in my clinic, so I don't feel like I need to justify myself, but I really,
You can zigzag through. So hang
yeah.
on. The One Heart, One Mind is largely about the pregnancy. The role of One Heart, One Mind, the 2nd book, is really case taking. how do we take the case of a child who cannot speak, and how can I find, for lack of a better word, a constitutional remedy for a child who cannot speak? That is why cease was invented. It was invented to circumvent that. It was invented on theories, which Hahnemann tells us to not follow, but just to follow the facts, to follow the light. We must follow the light. Cease came about because we had a problem. We had a problem with these so-called behaviors, which are not behaviors, by the way. Pooping in the closet is not a behavior. It's a symptom of autism, because a large percentage of kids do it. A large percentage of kids cannot listen to the flushing sound, or will eat one food, or line things up. These are not behaviors, they are symptoms. In front of this, being in front of the symptoms, if we don't go within, being in front of the symptoms was puzzling, was like, what do I do with that? And so let's follow some sort of, let's follow a theory. That's all we got left. So that's why cease came about, which is catastrophic. And actually, here I am, I'm trying to speak, for example, in England, and I'm told you cannot speak about autism. You can speak about autism, but don't mention it. So cease took us to this extreme that we can talk about autism, but don't mention the word. You see how detrimental it has been, where nobody can speak about autism and say the word. And in Canada, it's the same thing. So that is what cease created.
I don't think many people use cease anymore, though, to be fair. I think most...
Well, more or less the idea.
Yeah, the idea of it.
The idea of it is only because there was no way of putting words in that child's mouth. And that's why surrogacy, which came from the universe, that's why surrogacy is so important, because then we can go into the state again, go within, just like all other cases. Just like all other cases. Do not treat these cases differently. You don't need to repertorize pooping in the closet. It's not there. Forget about all this. Once you understand conceptual inability, stage 12, phase 7, you can eliminate all of that. All of that which falls into those categories. You eliminate that, and what you are left is the child. And now you can really heal.
Would you always give a mineral remedy then? So you'd always give something from phase 7, stage 12?
No, not at all. Not at all. No, phase 7 has nothing to do with the table of elements. Nothing at all. All remedies have, this is very, how to say, we're steeped into professional homeopathy here. It's not super, for the general public, that is sort of phase 7 separation, autism, that is, ça coule de source, as we say in French. It's so clear, it's there. Autism itself is that. So, but then we're talking professionally, yeah, there will be a phase 7 in the remedy, a phase or subphase. There will be on the stage 12. There will be a remedy that's going to make a huge difference, that is phase 7 and stage 12. No doubt about it. It probably will not be the only remedy given anyway, but one of those will have a huge effect. Yeah, the remedy that will have a huge effect has a stage 12 and under phase 7 in it. There's just no doubt about it.
Okay.
Because I see it in every single case. So, and again, it's neurotypicality. Some speech can be restored. Some sociability can be restored. Eye contact can be restored. These are the 3 key elements of autism. Some can be restored, yes, with various different methods. But again, it's a matter of healing, because Asperger is pretty much that. I can speak, but I'm going to speak only about dinosaurs or whatever. I'm going to have one subject. That is still spectrum. We're happy with that, but that's still spectrum. And that individual is going to speak only about dinosaurs. Yeah, we're happy this individual is speaking, right? But speaking only about autism, speaking only about dinosaurs, is still going to be looked at by anybody as being weird.
Mm.
And that individual is still going to be in phase 7 because it's not going to be accepted because it talks only about dinosaurs. You see? Say, well, he talks only about dinosaurs, and he looks at it and he comes too close to me.
Mm.
That is not neurotypicality. That is still spectrum, right? So let's not be confused of making change or diluting neurotypicality with something that is not. So somebody who speaks only about dinosaurs is simply not going to be well accepted. There's some people on the spectrum who have some incredible abilities. And we have to be willing for healing to lose those abilities to say, what was June 14th in 1960? What day was it? Losing that ability is pretty much a good thing. Okay? It may lose, it may not. But a lot of individuals on the spectrum would love to lose that to be accepted, because otherwise it's only an ability that doesn't have much purpose. It could be a wow effect. You know, in France, there's a kid who was a contestant in a game show where you have to answer questions, factual questions, and he won a whole bunch. That's great. That is great. But problem is, he's treated completely differently, not in a good way, you know,
Mm.
not in a good way at all. And he suffers from it. He suffers from this ability to be able to learn a dictionary. He suffers from it. And again, that is this inherent prejudice. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. I went to see a show, music, and it was clearly 4 kids put together because they had certain affinities. But the way they played was they just strung one song after another without pause, without anything. And that was painful.
Mm.
So yeah, they played, but they lost most of the audience. People left. And I felt super badly. I didn't leave just because of that, because I sort of knew it was, yeah, the parents were there, and it just could not have been a good feelings. They were happy the kids were on stage and so on. It was a little hole in the wall up in Harlem, New York. But that wasn't good.
Mm.
That wasn't good. So if we heal, that will go away. You know, the
Mm.
pause in between. They're going to be taught to put a pause, which has to be
Versus the concept of music
but
needs
the
a gap in
concept.
between to be able to
Yeah,
enjoy it, finishing off the one before you do the other instead of just saying you should
exactly.
pause there. No, I understand that. Pierre, I really invite our listeners to go and join you on your Facebook page where you actually share lots of, I love how you do like a mind dump and you share all of these things that's going through your mind. And it's actually so lovely to learn from. For our listeners, be sure to go check out Pierre's 3 books on his website, homeopathicservices.com, and there's reversingautism.net as well, where you can get the books from. Go listen to his lovely rants on Facebook. They're actually really great. I have learned a lot from them. And thank you so much for coming on the show. Is there any final message that you want to leave our listeners with? Apart from that, vaccines do not cause autism.
That cannot be taken wrongly. I think I want this one to be accurate.
Yeah, no, we got that.
I think anybody understanding autism here from within and all that, I think most individual can be healed from it. Yeah.
There's no doubt that you understand autism on a very deep level, because when I have listened to you talking and when the way that you're describing things, you can see that it's a deep passion for you and you understand it from a level that not many people understand it. And you've taken a lot of time and energy truly trying to get to the core of all of this. And I'm sure your patients have all benefited from that. And it's great that you've written books that we can learn from you as well.
Yeah, I think it is the core. I just I came out of it, like I said at the beginning, about a month and a half ago, where yeah, it's all been processed. Yeah,
Amazing.
very happy about it. I'm very very happy about it, and that's why I'm speaking, because it needs to be understood.
On a deep
Uh,
level, hey.
yeah.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you so much for your time. It's 2 AM your time now. I'm sure you're ready for bed. I hope you have a good sleep.
Thank you so much.
All the best.
Very, very, very much. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. I really do.
It's a pleasure.